Amriteshwaryai Namaha. Om Amriteshwaryai Namaha. Om Amriteshwaryai Namaha. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaidamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvāmanusandadhāmi Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravinda Yatapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bhartatela Purna Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipa Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapane Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsya Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Shivaya. So, what an amazing weekend we had last week. In many ways, we were filled with youthful vigor and Australian vigor and humor and all kinds of good stuff. And we learned a lot all around, basically. Definitely a worthwhile enterprise, whole thing. So, coming back, we skipped Gita, we missed it for a week, and we're coming back to chapter 2. We went up to verse 38, I believe, and I think we were just about to embark on a new subject in chapter 2. Do you all remember that we finished one subject in chapter 2 and we were about to start another one? Does anybody remember what we were about to start? Or did we not talk about it? Karma Yoga, exactly. So what was the previous subject up to verse 38? Generally speaking. Yeah, nature of the Atman, and also subjects related to that, like how to discriminate or discern between the Atma and Anatma. Right? So remember what we said, if the Atma or the Self is everything, then what is then if it's everything, very important piece of equipment. So if the Atma or the Self is everything, then why do we even need a term Anatma? Right? Why do we need the term the non-self? You're talking about everything to begin with. So, remember what we talked about? Yes?
Because we are caught in the web of illusion.
Yeah, we're caught in the web of illusion, which means?
That means separateness, duality.
So we think there's duality, right? So that illusion, or that illusory existence that we posit or we believe exists, we have to have a name for that because that's what we're interacting with all the time, or think we are. So that's why we have a word anatma, and Krishna was trying to guide Arjuna and us in distinguishing between the two. So there was a section on Atma, Anatma Viveka, and he was trying to have Arjuna better understand or discover his own self. And the self-discovery means the discovery of your freedom, your independence. Because when you cease to depend on the world, you're depending only on your true self, which is what he was trying to get Arjuna to do and us to do. Then he shifts to the topic of karma yoga. And before he makes that complete shift and starts talking about karma yoga, there's a couple of transition verses that we're going to discuss today. And this will give us an opportunity to go a little bit into the background of karma yoga, just in general, and so that we're ready when the full content comes later. So in verse 39, Krishna is going to talk about karma yoga, some general observations. And in verse 40, he's going to talk about a karma yogi. And what is a karma yogi? What is so special about that? Then afterwards, he starts to go into the full topic of karma yoga. So without further ado, let's do verse 39. Esha te vihita sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam srinu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. Okay, maybe so we have some special guests today. Let's have Stephen read the English for that then. And then from there, we'll go clockwise. He doesn't have the text, you can borrow it. Everybody's got
That which has been set before you is understanding in terms of Sankhya. Hear it now in terms of yoga. Your intellect established through it, O Partha, you will cast away the binding influence of action.
It's pretty good. Sounds pretty promising, right? So he said he talked about Sankhya. And then we might say, we did? We talked about Sankhya? I don't remember talking about Sankhya. So we have to be careful. What does Sankhya mean here? Or does anybody who has studied it properly, I guess, or who knows an Indian language in which this word comes up, what do you think Sankhya means? Anybody ever heard that word Sankhya before? Okay, Sankhya and yoga are two similar philosophies, part of the Shad-darshanas, or the 6 philosophies of Indian tradition. Anything else? Sankhya?
Numbers.
Number, right? Is that what it is in Hindi? Sankhya?
Yeah, Giri Pillai has said that.
See, in Malayalam it's a Malayalam word, yeah. Sankhya, yeah.
Hindi
Yeah,
also.
Sankhya, and then when you say it as a yoga, you say Sankhya yoga. Yeah, Sankhya. What's a word in Malayalam where you use that word Sankhya? Janasankhya. Yeah, Janasankhya means population.
It's a Sanskrit word.
Yeah, but Malayalam is full of words like that, right? So Jana means people and Sankhya means number. So number of people, population. So number. So actually Sankhya or Sankhya means the yoga of numbers. What is that? I thought we were talking about self-knowledge. But what it really means is Sankhya in this case is separate from the Sankhya yoga. From the Sankhya and yoga sort of schools of philosophy rather. It just means the Sankhya yoga means the yoga of logical reasoning. Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Numbers. It's very logical. It's very rational. So the yoga of logical thinking, logical reasoning. So it means the yoga of reaching the self through a logical process, of understanding the self through a logical process. All right, so this is the main subject of chapter 2. That's why it's called The chapter name is Sankhya Yoga. So it's the main. This is a little too much gain on the mic. I think you should turn down the gain. Or does it work if I turn this off? Maybe. Om, 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 om. I guess it doesn't work. Yeah. Just keep it ready just in case.
I don't have enough. I have to get the alternate one ready.
So that's the main subject matter. It doesn't mean it's the only topic discussed in chapter 2. It is just one. Like, so chapter 6 is a chapter about meditation, but many other subjects come up in chapter 6. And chapter 12 is supposed to be about devotion or bhakti, but chapter 11 looks like it talks about devotion even more than chapter 12. So these chapter names are not really so important. So he's going to talk about a different type of knowledge, which is the knowledge of action, karma yoga. So the question would be, why is Krishna suddenly bringing up the subject of action here? In verse 12 of chapter 2, he says that only knowledge, effectively he says that only knowledge can free us from sorrow, because he says that the wise never suffer, right? Remember that in verse 12 of chapter 2, he says, wise people never suffer. So the insinuation or the hint is that if you become wise, if you acquire wisdom, you won't suffer anymore. He doesn't say if you do karma, if you do action, you won't suffer anymore. So we may ask ourselves, well, why is he talking about karma yoga? Maybe this is, the yoga of action means we have an alternate path to realization or liberation. Maybe that's what it's telling us. But he already said that there's, the way to reach there is through wisdom. So it can be interpreted as a contradiction. Anybody want to answer this question or this sort of hypothetical question? Why does he have to talk about karma after he's already sort of told us that wisdom or knowledge is the ultimate cure?
Lead to? Does karma yoga lead to jnana yoga?
Very good, very good. Good intuition or understanding. Yeah, that's the point. Amma also says that, the only way to remove the ignorance from your mind is self-knowledge, right? It's like there's only one way to remove darkness. That's what the analogy that's usually given. You can do lots of things to try and remove the darkness. Ultimately, the ultimate cause for removing the darkness is going to be only one thing. You guys can imagine what that might be, right? What? Light. Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure you guys are on the same wavelength here. So, yes, light is the ultimate, is the final cause for removal of darkness. But you don't just suddenly have light. What do you have to do to bring light into a room? To pull the current, you have to pull the wire, you have to set up a light bulb, you have to do a lot of other things to get it ready. You don't just suddenly illuminate the place. So like there's preparation. There's no alternate method other than knowledge, which is why I interpret the Bible in this way. There's some quote in the Bible, Christ is the only begotten Son of the Father, something like that. Is that right? So for me, that means that pure consciousness or knowledge of the self is the only way to achieve. Knowledge is the only way to achieve the self, ultimately. But not all of us are prepared to understand that knowledge. If someone, even like Amma, comes and tells that to us, are we going to be able to understand that or absorb that fully? You remember the stories I told you about the Upanishads? There's a category of scripture called Upanishad, where the guru teaches the disciple, and during the course of the teaching, like one text, with the commentary, it might be this big. So without the commentary, it would be very small, right? Maybe like a half an hour conversation only. And then within that the space of the conversation, the disciple is realized. So, a lot of people fall asleep while reading these texts, right? Or while listening to Bhagavad Gita class. So, what does that tell us about the preparedness of that disciple versus us? To us, it's a very sort of abstruse, very sort of heady subject. We can't really understand it. So, it means that everything in life requires preparation, and especially something like this. So after Krishna, but the thing is, okay, yeah, he said that, and now he's saying karma, so maybe it's the preparation, but he first talks about Atma-jnana, right? If karma yoga is the preparation, why not talk about that first? Why talk about the yoga of knowledge first and then talk about the preparation? Doesn't that sound backwards? Which is what he did, right? Stephen feels, it looks like he wants to say something.
Well, we want to know where we're going, right? We don't want to just be wandering, we have to know where it is we're headed.
Very good, yeah. If you just start telling somebody directions to a place without telling them the ultimate destination, pretty soon they're going to start getting tired of listening to you. And wait, what are you telling me all this stuff for? Where are you trying to take me? And another reason why it is in this order is because we see the same thing in Amma. She often wants people to understand where they are now. So she can talk all the philosophy she wants. She can tell us what her experience of the self is, and I've seen her go on for a long time talking to certain disciples about like how a realized being sees the world. But she won't say that to just anybody on the street. Pull somebody out of the darshan line. Here, come sit here, I'm going to tell you this. That person has to be of a receptive mindset, right? So that's not just everybody. And if Arjuna had been ready to understand everything Krishna had said, he would have, that would have been it. Because Krishna would have told up to verse 38, and Arjuna would have said, okay, now I got it, I'm done. Let's get this battle over with, and I'm going to go, after I do my dharma, I'm going to go to the Himalayas and meditate and become God realized. But that's not what happened. He was still, presumably, slumped on the floor crying, right? Which is where he was last time we heard. So Arjuna is not one of those highly qualified disciples who just gets it right away. So Krishna has to continue. So he says, okay, I told you about the science of self-knowledge. Now I'm going to tell you something else, the next thing. There's a progression to achieving that self-knowledge, and each level of that progression requires some preparation. And in this case, because knowledge of the self is not knowledge of like anatomy or, just not knowledge of even just like psychology, it's a knowledge of something very subtle, which is your own self, right? It's your own essence. So it's very hard to, like we talked about before, it's like trying to illumine the battery using the flashlight. It's not such an easy thing. It takes a subtle mind and a pure mind. So Krishna is trying to guide him down that process. So karma yoga can be considered as liberation from, not ignorance, but from mental impurity. You're effectively liberating yourself from all these impurities that you have in your mind. Then, once your mind becomes pure, and then through bhakti yoga, or we also call it upasana, we can liberate ourselves from the impurity of mental turbulence or the inability to concentrate. Then we're ready for self-knowledge, which would be liberation from ignorance, spiritual ignorance. And everything is but like everything's a progression. So we just understand it in the same way we would understand any progression. First you go to elementary school, then you go to junior high, etc. Doesn't mean that self-knowledge is superior or anything like that necessarily, or knowledge, the path of wisdom or knowledge is superior, but it means that you don't suddenly study very difficult subjects, you have to prepare yourself for it. And you might wonder, having heard Amma's teachings, Amma talks about devotion, she talks about the gopis, she talks about Krishna, loving God, etc. So isn't that enough? Or is there something wrong with that? And obviously the answer is no, there's nothing wrong with that. But even if you're a gopi in Vrindavana, even if you're sitting with Krishna, or even if you're a gopi in Amritapuri sitting with Amma, you can't ignore the need for knowing yourself. You must have seen all the competition that goes on in Amritapuri around Amma. Tuesday morning meditation, right? Morning meditation means if you go there at 8 a.m., what do you see in the morning meditation? Who's been to Amritapuri? How many people have been there? Okay. So you were there on a Tuesday, I hope, right? Morning quote unquote morning meditation. You go there at 8 a.m. What do you see in the place? All the yoga mats are meditating. The people are not meditating. Some people are meditating, right? But what's the ratio of yoga mats or asanas, we say, to people? Huh? What would you say? Anybody? Hazard a guess?
10% people.
Yeah. Early it starts that. Slowly more people come. But when do they put their mats down? The night before they put the mats down. That's what they do. And because, you have to be, forgiving, because people may be staying up late doing some work. It's a huge place. You have to work all night long. So if you got the late shift and you're going to go to bed at 5 a.m. or something, and you know that Amma will be, when you wake up in the morning, you're just going to jump in the shower and go there. Before you go to bed, you're going to be tempted to spread your mat there near Amma's chair, right? Otherwise, you're going to be like miles away when Amma comes, right? So this is what they do. They spread their mats. and then if you forgot to spread your mat and you come late, typically what do? What are the boys or girls? It doesn't matter. Boys and girls do the same thing. Not always, but some people, the brazen people. You have like 10 people in a square foot, and then there's always space for one more, So they just come up there, they find a little crevice, they get their foot inside of it, and then they just sit down. It means you're sitting on top of somebody's knee or something like that, but it's okay, because psychological space in India is very narrow. So it's funny. That's how people do it. So this is okay in terms of love for the Guru and attachment to the Guru, but that shouldn't be the full expression of our spiritual individuality. That is not adequate. We have to show that we're learning something more about who we really are, other than fighting over jockeying for position near Amma. Someday she'll just say, okay, I'm going to put you in charge of the Antarctica ashram. And then you'll be sent off, or the Chicago ashram. In January. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I'll tell you, you ask anybody who was in India when I first got there, for the first 5 years, I was the one who never went into Amma. I was always staying far away. So, I would always be sitting at the back. Everybody knows that. But anyhow, so I don't feel like I've been banished or not like that. But the thing is, if you're really sort of immature in that way, then definitely your time will come. Amma will, force you to become independent or to become mature in that way. Okay. So the point is that karma yoga is incomplete without the pursuit of self-knowledge. It's not complete. It's not enough to just work. Like you came here today. That is giving a kind of a completion to all your efforts at karma yoga, the yoga of action. But the yoga of knowledge, or the yoga of self-wisdom, self-knowledge, is incomplete, is impossible without karma yoga. Right? There's a lot of people who have read scriptures and can understand them intellectually, but have huge egos. You may have met some. Very egoistic, they get angry easily. You don't see them practicing it, but they can tell you a lot about it. So that's also showing that they haven't gone through the proper progression. So it's impossible to really understand without the mental preparation, purification, and karma yoga is not complete without the attempts at understanding yourself. So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into my own argument now. What about, not my argument, Krishna's argument. What about people like Ramana Maharishi? Did they have a guru? Did they do karma yoga? Ever hear anything about Maharishi or Nisargadatta Maharaj? These are well-known saints in some circles. Anybody, did you ever hear of them doing any karma yoga? No? People who've heard of them said no. So, let's say you knew who they were. They're recognized, realized beings. I don't know if Amma says about Nisargadatta Maharaj, but in many circles he's recognized as a realized Mahatma. And of course Ramana Maharishi is, definitely. And they didn't do karma yoga, it's true. And not that we know of. Maybe they hid in a cave and did it or something. Okay, anybody who has not spoken yet want to try to tell us how that can be possible? Yes?
I'm just wondering, so they didn't do any karma yoga, but they did a lot of meditation? And is that
Well,
or were they just born?
I'm not so thorough with Nisargadatta Maharaj, but Ramana Maharishi, he just basically did spiritual practices, and even then it was a very short period of sadhana. He just was like suddenly, very quickly he achieved realization. So?
Due to previous lives.
See? That's the only answer that it remains. Amma says that. And she gives the example of a guy hitting a rock. I told you that one, no? One guy is hitting a rock for weeks and months, and, say years, he's just hitting this huge boulder trying to crack it open. And another guy comes up, young guy comes up, and then there's another boulder right next to that, and he comes, hits it once, and the thing splits in half. And the guy's like, what is this? This is ridiculous. And then he, complains to God. And then God, he hears a voice that this guy, for many, many lifetimes, every year he's been coming and hitting this rock his whole life. And, now he's finally old enough in this life to come and resume the work he was doing. So all he had to do was hit it one more time, but last lifetime he died before he could do that. So this time he was able to get that last whack in, and it split in half. Here, this is your first lifetime doing it. So that's what it's like. That rock is our ego, is our ignorance, right? So it just means that we may feel like we're not getting anywhere, but that effort is definitely paying off and necessary. So all this karma yoga is taught to help Arjuna prepare himself for self-knowledge. But before actually getting into the content, Krishna has to do a little commercial, right? So verse 39 is a commercial, a word from our sponsor. He praises self-knowledge. He praises the knowledge of karma, rather. Karma yoga. He says, if you learn how to do this, you'll be saved from, all your, what does he say? You will cast away the binding influence of all action. Yeah, that's the key thing. You'll continue to do action, but it won't bind you anymore. Now, every time we do something, we think, my work, and I should get the benefit. Is there anything that irks us more? You do the work and somebody else gets praised? You're like, come on, I was the one that did all the work, and now you're praising that guy. He just came in at the last minute and sat down and joined, Some people are like that, you do all the legwork, and then they come at the opportune moment and take all the glory, But in a way, that means that they have some good karma if they get the glory, if they really get it. They have some, otherwise they wouldn't get it, right? And we shouldn't be doing it for the glory, but somehow our ego confuses us into thinking that that's important or relevant. So Krishna is a very good salesman. He promotes the product to instill interest in the listener. And so Amma herself says that devotion, the path of devotion or bhakti, is actually the easiest path in Kali Yuga. She said it many times. Devotion is the easiest and quote-unquote best, I guess you could say, path for this age. Singing bhajans, chanting a mantra. Anybody read that passage? Anybody remember why Amma says that? For example, bhajans, kirtan. Why does she say it's so important in today's world? Yeah?
Well, I've read a few different times where she's talked about that, and one is that it's easier to gain concentration in the Kali Yuga by singing bhajans than just sitting for meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Why? Anybody remember why she says that? She gives a reason too. Yes?
something about like the negative vibration.
Yeah.
Atmosphere.
There's a lot of negative vibrations in the atmosphere. So if we're passive, they sort of take over. But if we create positive vibrations, especially through mantra or singing, it kind of neutralizes those negative vibrations. But she doesn't say in the same breath, she doesn't say, so you don't need to know who you are. Just sing bhajans. She doesn't say that. She says it's easier. But in Viveka Chudamani, which is another really beautiful scripture that Shankaracharya has left us all, I think it's verse 32, he says, real devotion is the inquiry into the nature of one's own self. It's a beautiful quote. If you really want to know what devotion is, you have to know who you are. Because how long can you praise a God that's somehow completely different than you? Ultimately, it's something irrelevant. You're never going to be that. You're never going to merge in that. It's just always separate. Amma says there's a joy, there's a sweetness to praising God with duality. But ultimately, we want to merge in that. We want to become one with that. That's how lovers feel. It's not like they just always they somehow their minds become like one. So that's what we do with God. God is like the ultimate lover. So we use karma and we use devotion or bhakti to make self-knowledge easier because they prepare our mind. And if you love something, how much easier is it to know it? If you don't love it, you're not going to really focus on it at all. So through devotion, we develop love for something that is really ultimately, too subtle to grasp with our mind. So whether a subject is difficult or easy depends on how much you prepare yourself beforehand. So what was your best subject in, say, like high school? Oh, that's Kota-san no 高校時代の一番得意な科目って授業って何だった？得意な授業と苦手な授業どっち？みんな苦手だった。
特に中学生時代だったら
中学生でいい。中学生でいい。
中学校の時は社会とか理科は得意でした、ね。
それで苦手なのは？
数学とか苦手でした。
Okay.
Can we replace it with wired mic?
Sure. Yeah. So he says that his social studies and science were his best subjects, and math was his worst subject. So for me, it was the other way around. For me, math, it was sort of similar actually. Math was my best subject, and then Japanese I really loved also, and then English was my worst. English and history. So everybody's got different. So what makes, for example, math? If math was easy for me, other people it's difficult. Who found math to be their worst subject in high school? Right, there's other people, right? So for me, it's easy. For you, it's difficult. And for what was easy for you, was probably difficult for me. So which is it? Is it easy or difficult? What is math? Easy or difficult?
Neither.
What is it then? Just math, exactly. It is what it is. But what we can say is that in a past life, maybe I did more math, or I was more inclined to do math. What was you still in high school? You're done?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was your best subject in high school?
Art.
Art. There you go. I was clueless in art. I wouldn't have done well at all. So he was good at art, and I was clueless, and I was good at math, and he found it difficult. So it just means that in past lives we were doing different things. That's all. So the preparation makes it easier. So that's what we were talking about earlier. Karma yoga removes the impurity of mental, emotional disturbances like anger, jealousy, pride, etc. And bhakti yoga or upasana removes the impurity of inability to concentrate, I guess you could say, inability of the disturbance. It removes the impurity of mental turbulence. And knowledge removes the impurity of ignorance. That's what we would say.
Swami, Bhuji from Iowa has a wonderful question. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll time it. Tell him to hang on to that thought, okay? Because we're trying to get to a certain point before we close tonight. So Amma gives this beautiful analogy, which is that of pouring milk in a vessel. You guys remember that? She said it many, many times. Who remembers it? Who has not spoken yet? Anybody? You were going to say it? Okay, Navya, what is it? What does she say?
Little milk spoil. If you pour it into an unclean vessel, it'll spoil.
So what's the implication? What's an analogy for? In this case, how would we apply that here? What's the vessel and what's the milk?
The vessel is ourselves.
The mind. Yeah, the mind, right.
The milk is the knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge of the self. So if you don't purify your mind, there are stories, and we see unfortunately in the news, stories about people exploiting the spiritual occupation or the spiritual life, and exploiting it for not so noble objectives, right? So then people lose faith in that whole line of work, right? So that's an example. They could give talks, but then they actually weren't really practicing what they were preaching. Okay. Another reason why Krishna teaches the knowledge portion or jnana yoga first is because some people might, there's a tendency for us to feel like, if this was sort of like what Stephen said, if this was the destination, why didn't you tell me in the very beginning? And you've been teaching me all this other stuff, and actually this was what you really meant to say. So that's why also what Amma does, she tells everybody, this is what we're supposed to do, and this is what we're practicing here, meditation and knowledge of the self, and then she gives you an opportunity to practice it. Like I said, she would say, meditate for 8 hours a day, and they go and they try and do it, and they get completely fed up, they realize they can't do it, and they come back and they say, can I do some seva, please? She says, okay, you can do seva instead. So then you start doing seva, and wow, this is much better than sitting for 8 hours a day. So then you appreciate the seva. It puts it in a totally different perspective. So Krishna tells Arjuna with supreme truth, and he's like, wait a second. Because we've been doing this for how many months now? This course? Huh? 6 months or 8 months almost, right? And so that section that Krishna was talking about, the Atma, we did it over weeks. And even we still struggle to understand. Arjuna heard it in a matter of minutes, right? There was no commentary, there was no gap in between, so his head must have been spinning. And that awareness of the final goal really helps us bring meaning into our daily practice. You ever find that your daily practice sometimes feels like it's missing that sort of pep and enthusiasm? That's why, because we're forgetting that ultimate goal. So that's why he really has to mentioned that at the beginning. Amma says it's like going on a vacation with your family or something. The parents set the destination, and you get on the road, and you tell the kids you're going to Yosemite or whatever it is, right? We grew up in California. Yosemite was the destination. So here, I don't know where it would be. Maybe you're going to Wisconsin or something like that. So let's say you're going to Yosemite, so you get on the highway and you're driving, and it's just boring highway for hours, right? And the kids will be like, what is this? I thought we were going to Yosemite. This is so boring, What can you say? Are we not going to Yosemite? Yes, we're going to Yosemite. Yes, the scenery is very boring now. But, we're on the highway for a few hours, then we get off, and then it gets a little bit better. It gets a little more interesting. So it's like when people go to Amrita Puri and they're supposed to be going to, self-knowledge, and they find themselves washing pots. And they're like, this is so boring. Why am I doing this? This is just like driving on the highway for hours. But then you need to know that this has a direct connection with the final destination. Otherwise, it becomes very boring and hard to maintain your enthusiasm. That's the lack of maturity. So he tells him, by learning and practicing this, you'll destroy the shackles that karma or action normally places on people. And you will be free from all your problems now, not after death. The idea is that even in this body, you can free yourself from the shackles of action, from karma. Does that make sense? We don't think that we have to die, right, to achieve realization? No, okay. Amma says, why not now? Why not now? You can have it now. But you have to go through the progression. So the question will become soon when we get into Karma Yoga, what is the difference between just plain old karma or action and Karma Yoga? Right? Because I remember in 1992 was my first year with Amma in Japan. I missed 1991 because Amma didn't come. It got cancelled. I told you all that, no? She was supposed to come, and then Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated and she couldn't leave the country. So we were stuck in Tokyo with no Amma, but a hall and everything else. It's very awkward. So the first year for me was 1992. And we, after the program was over, Amma called some of the organizers. And we were up on the 5th floor of I think it was 5th floor of Ukon House in Meidai-mae Eki. So Yokoyama-san knows where Meidai-mae is because she lives in that part of the country. So it's just, I'm sure it's still there. It's a weekly mansion they have in Tokyo. That's what they call them, just weekly apartments. That's where Amma stayed. She had nowhere else to go, no house or a devotee or anything like that. So she called them, there was an interview with them, and they said, tell us what you think of Japan. This is a common question. Tell me what you think of my country. And she told, Japanese people, I like them so much. They work so hard, very dedicated. And then these people had studied a little bit of spirituality. So the guy said, karma yogis? And Amma said, karma yogi? Maybe not quite karma yogi. So then they were like, really? Well, we work a lot. So there's a disappointment for the people because they thought that just working hard meant karma yogi. But Amma made a distinction. So what's the distinction? What's the difference? Really want to guess? Paunami?
That karma yogi doesn't have attachment to the result.
Okay. That's true, and I'm going to ask someone for a further clarification. If you don't have attachment to the results, quote-unquote results, then why would you even do it? Why do we even talk about karma yoga? What's the purpose if there's no result to speak of? It's a waste of time or what? There must be some result. And how do we how do we distinguish that result that we are looking for from the result that we're supposedly detached from? Yes, Marla?
Well, in karma yoga, it's a purification, and you don't actually know how the purification is going to show up. You just do without the expectation of how. That's
So okay, purification. So, we're getting somewhere. Typically, when you do some kind of action or work, what is that result that you are attached to? Like Paurnami said, it's Karma Yoga, we're not attached, so it means it's different from typical work. So work we are attached, but what are we attached to, per se?
the end goal.
Sorry?
The end goal.
No, but let's put it in a little bit more concrete terms. What is that outcome that we are attached to? Give me some examples.
We want praise for what we've done.
Okay, we want praise. We want? What else?
Profit.
Profit. We want some money. Right? We got to pay the bills or whatever it is. We can do work and get money. Then, what else do we want?
Amma's grace.
Typically, people are not doing work for that. They may say that. That is not what they're looking for if they're out in the world. And I mean, even if they're a devotee, they might struggle to think about that most of the time. Okay, this is enough. Praise and money, right? So then, in this case, let's say that the karma yogi, or he's doing his work as with an idea as karma yoga, and as Paurnami says, he's not attached to the money or the praise. But he's got to be doing it for some reason. So what Marla said is he's looking for purification, or she's looking for something of that side, something of that variety. What's the difference between what Rudran and Mahana said and what Marla said? The karmi, what we say, if it's not karma yogi, you call the person a karmi, just someone who acts, like a workaholic. But then the karma yogi is interested in purification. So just as a general rule of thumb, what are we saying about the difference between the two of these? One is interested in something, and the other one, karma yogi, is interested in something else. They're both outcomes, they're both effects, results, right?
One is generally material and one is spiritual.
Yeah, you could say, material, spiritual, or external, internal, right? Karmi is interested in external, tangible, concrete outcome of some kind. And karma yogi is looking, or yogini is looking at internal outcomes, internal results. Now, another very important thing is that there's a difference chronological, or in time space, so to speak, there's a difference between those outcomes also. When do you get the profit, or when do you get the praise? At the same time that you do the action, or is there a time lag? Doesn't happen simultaneously, right? There's a delay. You don't work 5 hours and immediately get paid, most of the time at least. Or if you work 1 hour, you don't get paid, you have to work a whole day, you have to work a whole week or a month. So the money comes later, and it may not come as much as you wanted. But what about the purification for a karma yogi?
Well, I can say from experience of years, the better part of practicing yoga for 13 years, I would clean all the studios, any studio that I was practicing at, and what I found was that when I would clean the studio and then when I would practice, my internal space would be brighter during my practice, and it would be clearer, and I would have a greater clarity on the mat than if I didn't clean
Right.
the studio.
So the purity you get from karma yoga is immediate. That's the point. So you don't have to wait for it. So it's different. This is what we're talking about. The difference is that external versus internal, later versus immediate. So knowing the nature of action gives you detachment from it. That's what Paurnami was saying. You're not attached. So you get detached from the actions if you know the nature of how they work. That's why Amma always tells us to study the nature of the world. Remember what the examples she gives when she talks about study the nature of the world and acquire vairagya or detachment? She gives one example very frequently. If you know that does that ring a bell? She talks about ice cream. You may really like ice cream. But then if you find out that What? What's the example?
Lizard goes in it.
Yeah, so Swamiji translates it, if you find out that a lizard has peed in it or urinated in it, you won't want to eat the ice cream. Actually, I've never seen lizards in India, they're geckos, they're all geckos. So the word Pali means gecko, she's actually saying. So these geckos, from India, they come and they're notorious for getting on the food and doing their business. So she says, if that happens, are you going to eat the ice cream? No. So Shankaracharya also says we're attached to our body, we think it's so great, but it's full of blood, pus, urine, excreta, and so forth. So he says you should see the defects in these things and develop a detachment. Okay, so this is our introductory overview of Karma Yoga. We're going to move on. The rest of it will be much faster. Verse 40. Neha bhikrama nashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayad. Vijay.
In this, no effort is lost and no obstacle exists. Even a little of this dharma delivers from great fear.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So again, he's glorifying Karma Yoga again. So the detailed description of what Karma Yoga is going to come later. So he's just glorifying it, getting us interested and excited about it. So the Karma Yoga gives importance to inner growth rather than external growth, inner accomplishments rather than external accomplishments. So don't think that, but when we say that, it means that we're going to throw away all this notion of external accomplishments. It just means that it's never the primary goal, right? So external accomplishments or external benefits are always considered subservient or secondary to our spiritual growth. So this is a good litmus test. People ask questions like, how do I know whether it's better to do A or B? And then we should just ask ourselves whether either one of them forces us to compromise our spiritual goals in life. And that is one thing that, Amma says, you never should feel like compelled, like you must compromise your spirituality for the sake of one thing or another. So if something is pushing you to do that, that would probably be the one you would avoid. So a karma yogi makes sure that he or she never does that. They never compromise their spiritual growth for the sake of doing actions. But those, whatever material gains that we seek, we don't reject them. They're okay, but they should never become the number one goal. And, contrary to what the mainstream society may believe, this is what Bhagavad Gita teaches us, that peace of mind depends not at all on what you have, but on what you are or who you are. So focus more on increasing or improving your inner content rather than gathering up all the objects in the world, which is what we typically do. Remember, in America, the typical philosophy or psychology is that everything has to be bigger. Is it not? Isn't it like that? Bigger car, or these days people are finally waking up. Bigger TV, bigger house, bigger yard, bigger swimming pool. But when I moved to Japan, when I was living there for 10 years, I was like, bigger's better, right? And they're like, no. It's a different psychology there. Like small things are good. We like small things here in Japan. So it's just a cultural difference, It's like, America, you have all the space in the world, and you go to Costco and they have these huge bins of like detergent, washing detergent, So, I was telling Japanese some people there that, we should get one of these big things of detergent, will save money. And they're like, they just see right through it because their culture is different. They're like, it's just diluted, In Japan, we know how to make laundry detergent that has the same effect, but it's in a small box. It's concentrated. So you need a little spoon instead of like this gargantuan spoon, So it's American psychology. We think big things are better, typically. So we acquire lots of them. But, and also the other thing is that it's very difficult for us to change ourselves, right? You find, you hit a brick wall inside of yourself, of obstructing the transformational process. When you hit that brick wall, there's always a temptation to try and make up the difference by changing the rest of your world or your life. Getting more things or getting rid of certain things or people or whatever it might be. And making up for the difference that we can't bring about on ourselves. So he says there's no waste of effort. So the important thing here is that even if you think you fail on the spiritual path, if you're doing karma yoga, Krishna himself is saying that there's no failure. There's no such thing as failure. Isn't that kind of reassuring? There's no such thing as a spiritual failure. Wow, that's kind of encouraging, isn't it? Why would he say there's no such thing as a spiritual failure? You can think that, well, I'm a failure. I tried to meditate, I couldn't meditate. I tried to do seva and I ended up getting angry and I wasn't able to do it properly. I tried to chant my mantra and I lost my concentration. I'm a failure. Why is that? Why does Krishna say that? Why does Krishna say that that's not true? Yeah?
Because if you're aware of those things, it already takes you to another place. If you're aware of, I didn't do this, it just takes you have this observation of yourself.
Right. You're getting objectivity towards yourself. The effort alone is creating a momentum in a different direction. Typically our minds are always going outside, looking at things and objects and people, possessions, money. But by doing anything spiritual, we're already sort of redirecting that extroverted flow of the mind. That itself is something to speak of. It's progress. Amma says, look at a small child. They try to walk, for I don't know how long. I never had a baby. Whoever had a baby, how long does it take for a child to really figure out how to walk? Remember, Mom, how long it took me to walk? No, you don't remember, I can see you. Anybody remember how long did it take Shrey and Riddhi to walk?
Riddhi walked at the age of 10 months.
No, but they start crawling and then they fall over many times, right?
2-3 months, yeah.
2-3 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the process, how many times do they fall?
They fall all the time.
Like hundreds and hundreds of times they're falling, right? From the process of starting to walk, Uma.
Oh, from the process.
Yeah, if they're just lying in bed, you can't say they're practicing walking, right? But the thing is, we were lying spiritually ignorant for a long time. Now, we've reached the part where we're trying to crawl at least, right? Try to walk. So that's that few months period, right? And in the process, they fall over and over again. And the Amma says that's not failure. They're in the process of learning how to walk. So we're the same thing. Karma yoga, you mess up, you blow it many times, so to speak. But then it's not a waste of effort. From the worldly standpoint, you might be a failure. Maybe you worked less hours and you made less money and you have less possessions, so you're a failure from the worldly standpoint. You don't have, the latest iPod, you don't have the latest TV or car or whatever it is. So you're a failure by the worldly standards. But spiritually, Krishna would say, no, you're not. Because you've got your priorities straight in life. At least spiritual priorities. If you have the karma yoga attitude, even all your worldly failures will teach you something. All your losses will teach you something. If you have the right attitude, even a gain will teach you something. But typically we forget God and Amma when things go well. You know, when it goes bad, we think, Amma, help me. You know, when it goes well, you say, see what I did. You know, this is the typical thing, right? So if we really are aware, we can make use of both praise and blame. You know, wow. If someone praises you and says, you're so great at XYZ, you can think, isn't that amazing how God's power, you know, the universal power shines through into people, human beings, and makes them do amazing things. Even I can do something that makes people feel good, you know. And then when something bad happens, you're like, well, I'm not the one doing it in the first place, so I mean, they're not really blaming me. So if you can dissociate yourself from praise and blame, then you're really practicing karma yoga. But if you look at it purely from a worldly standpoint, let's say you're trying to learn something. You spend 7 years learning some worldly subject, say like mechanical engineering. And you're 1 year away from getting your PhD, and you just say, I'm fed up with this subject, and you just drop it. I'm not going to get my PhD, I don't want to get it anymore. Everyone is thinking, oh my gosh, you just have to do it 1 more year and you're going to have your PhD. Why don't you just keep doing it? You're a failure, right? From a worldly standpoint. But if you were a karma yogi, normally a karma yogi wouldn't, you know, give up like that at the last minute anyhow. But let's say you did something and then, you know, you didn't finish it, or you weren't able to finish it. Let's say you ran out of money, it's out of your control. From a spiritual standpoint, you would have to figure out that that's not a failure, right? Even if you didn't get the PhD, what benefit did you get out of studying for 7 years? Even if you didn't finish. Got some knowledge, what else? That would help you on the spiritual path. What did you learn? Discipline. Concentration, right? All these things you learn through studying, and that you can apply that in the spiritual realm amply, you know. You're going to need discipline and concentration when you try to meditate, etc. So, and Amma gives the example of the guy who had a dog with a curly tail. You know, in India, all the dogs have curly tails. If you didn't know that already. This guy was just so fed up with the curly tail of the dog. And he said, that's it. I'm just going to straighten this tail. So he took a tube of PVC pipe, and he just trying to fit that dog's tail in the PVC pipe for like hours and hours and hours. And the dog was a very calm dog, so it didn't bite him or anything. You know, that's my addition to the story. But he worked for hours to try and get the tail in the pipe, and he couldn't do it. So he was a failure, right? But Amma said that from another standpoint, he wasn't a failure. What did she say? What benefit did he get out of doing that?
The knowledge you couldn't straighten out.
I know. She said he built up his muscles, she said. Been trying to stuff that tail in there for a long time. But afterwards he was really got a good workout. So, you know, when Amma uses that analogy, she says, people say that I can't meditate, I can't do this, I can't concentrate. She says, in the process of trying to do it, you're developing your spiritual muscles or the ability to concentrate. Even if you feel like you're a failure, it's like the guy who couldn't get the tail in the tube. Okay, fine, couldn't do it, but now you're stronger. Next time you might get it in the tube. All right. So there's no waste of effort. Spiritual efforts are for mental purification, and that takes immediately, simultaneously, so there's never any waste. So our focus should always be just on having the right attitude. No need to worry about the outcome, the physical outcome, because we can't control it anyhow, right? I know many people have worked really hard and then gotten fired. So you're like, what was the use of all that, right? But, you know, it just shows that you can't control the outcome of your actions. And he also says there's no opposite effect, which is called pratyavaya. What does he mean when you say there's no opposite effect? You're trying to do karma yoga, you know, and there's an opposite effect. He says that's not possible. In the world, let's say you're trying to do something, and then the opposite thing happens. What would be an example of that?
You try to make money through something and you lose it all.
There you go. You invest in the stock market in 2008. put all your money in the stock market and you're like, I'm going to be rich, then you're a pauper afterwards. That's an example, right? Or you think, I'm going to show off, and some people send me these videos, what do they call it? Epic fail videos, there's I don't know, there's this new trend, they have all these videos, it's really, really sad to see what people are trying to do, they're like, all their friends are watching, like, I'm going to show off and do something. I don't know what these people are thinking. The most recent one somebody sent me is this guy, there's this ceiling fan spinning really fast, and there's like a piece of string right up there, and then he's there, and he's just waiting for a gap in the ceiling fan. He's going to grab that thing with his mouth or something. And of course he gets hit by the fan, he goes flying, and he's crying, and everything was like... but all his friends are watching. Okay, so he thinks he's going to be cool and show off. In the end, the opposite happens, where he looks like an idiot. This is what happens in worldly things, right? But in Karma Yoga, he's saying that doesn't happen. The opposite outcome doesn't come. You think you're going to get what from Karma Yoga? Purification. And then you end up getting more impurity in your mind. He says, no, that's not going to happen. As long as you have the right attitude, which, like Paunami and the rest of you pointed out, means detachment from the material outcome. But the precondition for getting that purification is something that Krishna said in the previous verse. Should we go back and look at it? Verse 38. What was that, anyhow? Anybody want to share that with us? How about you, Swarna? Why don't you read that out to us? Someone turn the mic on for her. Verse 38. I want us to all to go back to that and refresh our memories. Can you read it?
Although their minds clouded by greed.
No, 38.
That is 38.
Oh, that's probably not chapter 2. It's chapter something else. Page 73. There you go.
Gained equanimity in pleasure and pain, and gain in loss, in victory and defeat, then come out to fight. Thus you will not incur sin. Okay,
there you go. So having gained equanimity, right? That's the key thing, samatva. If we have equanimity, we can avoid having opposite effects. So if we focus on anything, that's our one goal in Karma Yoga. Keep a balanced, peaceful mind. Take a deep breath. As Darren said in their course, take a chill pill. That's one of his favorite words. So, and I gave that in. And then the other thing is that we have to learn, in order to maintain our equanimity, or samatvam, and a very important thing is to distinguish between intrinsic outcome and incidental outcome of a particular action, right? So if you run around the block, there's an intrinsic outcome to that. What would that be? What happens if you just run around the block?
You end up where you started.
Oh, that's a good point. What else? You could do that just by crawling around the block, or but if you run around the block, what's...
You get a cardio workout.
Yeah, you get a little workout, you burn off some calories, right? What might be an expectation we're going to have of jogging, but not guaranteed, which is sort of a incidental outcome of exercising. Lose weight. Yeah, you may lose weight. Let's say you do lose weight, but a lot of people do this kind of thing with another goal in mind, which might be looking beautiful or handsome, getting praised by people, having people say, oh, you look great, Maybe no one's going to say that to you, right? That's the incidental outcome that might happen, might not happen. So if you're doing these things expecting the incidental outcome, it's a very dangerous endeavor. But if you just think, all I want to do is burn off a few calories, you're pretty guaranteed not to be disappointed, because if you jog a certain amount, it's guaranteed you're going to burn off the calories. So like that, any action has an intrinsic outcome, and some of them have incidental outcomes. So the more we expect incidentals, the more likely we are to become disappointed. You're just setting yourself up for failure. So the karmi's mind, or the one who just simply works, his or her mind is tossed up and down by these expectations of incidental things that are not guaranteed. So they get really upset. That's why you see some people who work really hard get really emotional too. Have you seen that? It's typical. Work really hard, but also very attached to the work, what they're doing. So the karma yogi works very hard, like Amma works very hard, but not disturbed by the outcome, right? And the proof of that is the fact that we come every year and we haven't changed a whole lot, and she still hugs us, right? Like I often say that because it's true. It's like we come for darshan and she'll be like, you didn't even change at all. What if she just said that, you know? You're the same, you're worse than you were last year or something like that. It's like the worst thing you would, hear her say, you want me to give you darshan again? You know? Man, this is really bumming me out. It's a waste of my time. If she were to say that, then she's not a karma yogini, right? But she doesn't say that. It's because she's not doing it, just for that. She says, I'm just doing this to share love because I enjoy sharing love with people. I'm already getting the benefit right now. So Shankaracharya says, and I forget where I got this from, but he says, "Oh fool," and he means all of us. "Oh fool, give up the desire for wealth, cultivate vairagya, whatever be the result, and by that wealth, learn to be happy. Oh fool, give up desire for wealth, cultivate detachment, whatever the result may be, and by that wealth of detachment, learn to be happy." It's nice. Detachment is a wealth. Think of that, huh? Means that no matter what happens, you're happy. Isn't that, what better wealth can you have, can you expect? We think that $1 billion is going to prevent us from being sad, that's all. But he says, no. If you're detached, then you'll always be happy. So, when there's attachment, you have to do everything perfectly to get the proper outcome. And there's, even in pujas and chanting, there's two different categories of ceremonies and chanting. One is when you do like chanting the Lalita Sahasranama for the sake of spiritual benefit, and then chanting it for like some material gain. So Amma says that if you chant the Lalita Sahasranama or the 1,000 names with material gain in mind, you have to do it perfectly. You have to pronounce it perfectly and do it really carefully. Otherwise, you might get the opposite outcome. You made a mistake, you were trying to do such and so. But if you do it for spiritual progress, there's a lot of people who can't even pronounce it properly. I mean, I'm probably one of them, even Amma would say. But, like for example, in Japanese, you can't even write it properly. There's just no letters to express it properly. So if you're reading that in Japanese letters, you're guaranteed to be mispronouncing it. So why does Amma allow us to publish it if you're going to get bad results from that? No, she says it's not bad results. You're doing it for spiritual growth, for purification. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but you try your best, that's good enough. And what is great fear? What does he say? Even a little of this Dharma delivers one from great fear. What does that mean? What is the fear of? What's the greatest fear that everybody has? Because he says great fear. What? There's no fear greater than the fear of what? Death. So in other words, when you get detachment, even death can't bother you anymore. Okay, let's read 41 and then we'll stop after that. Because the next verses come as a set, 42, 3, 4. Or like I said, we won't be able to finish that properly today. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakha hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Okay, Navya.
In this yoga, O joy of the Purus, the resolute intellect is one-pointed, but many-branched and infinitely diverse are the intellects of the irresolute.
Okay. Vyavasayatmika buddhi means resolute intellect or mind. So he's saying how great the karma yogi is. So we want to become one. It's like people, they make the commercials, become a healthy person, and they make the healthy person look really great on the commercial. So he's saying karma yogi is spiritually healthy, you should become like one of those. So this is a commercial about that, but the difference here is that it's true. You know, if you buy the product of karma yoga, it will benefit you for sure. So this is what he's trying to do, and one thing that we need to understand, the importance of the resolute mind becomes very relevant here in the Indian spiritual context, because India is full, it's replete with different techniques and scriptures and, gurus and approaches to the divine. So it's very easy to get confused. Other traditions seem a little simpler, like church, you go to church on Sunday. What else? Just go on Sunday morning, you've done it. And in Shintoism, in Japan, you go to the temple, you bow down again, and done. It's very straightforward. You can be thinking something, of course, and praying, whatever, but it's all clear what you're supposed to do, and then you go do that, and then you do this, and then the procedure is very clear. But in India, it's like complete, chaos. It seems a spiritual chaos sometimes. So people may be feeling that we need some clarity. We need to figure out where does everything fit, and where does Amma fit, where does what we're doing fit, etc. And there's countless scriptures in India also, and they all prescribe different things, and they tell you that different gods are higher than others, and they sometimes seem to even contradict each other. So there's a lot of scope for confusion if we don't get clear ourselves inside. So we need to also understand the role of our own spiritual practices, whatever Amma is telling us to do. So what Krishna is saying is that a true karma yogi is clear on what he's supposed to do or she's supposed to do and why. So knowing that there's an ultimate goal and there's a way to get there. So like if it's from here, we're trying to go to Amritapuri, let's say Amritapuri is self-knowledge. You go from here, you go, how to get to 88, and you get to 88, and where do you go? O'Hare. Get on the plane, fly, maybe via Dubai, you get there to, Cochin, or take a taxi, all that. All these steps, we understand the whole route map. It's like a route map to the self, or to self-knowledge. So what he's talking about, the Vyavasayatmika buddhi, or the one of resolute intellect, understands that whole route map. So he doesn't get confused, or she doesn't get confused on the way, when Amma says wash dishes or sweep the floor or something like that. So each individual step is definitely a goal, and it has a lot of importance, but only as part of a larger goal, larger process. So later in this chapter, Lord Krishna is going to talk about the qualities of a realized being. But here he's talking about the route map to getting there. Just in one word, he just calls it the Vyavasayatmika buddhi. So anybody want to try to remember what that process was? We just described it in sort of general terms. Here we are, we're just starting the path, perhaps. What's the first thing we have to do? We talked about it earlier in the Gita class like months ago. But what's the first step on the path? We have to make sure we know the route map, first of all. What's the first step?
Preparation.
Sorry? Preparation. So what are we preparing? Our mind, right? So how do we prepare our mind? Milind says to karma yoga, but what is the outcome that we're looking for from karma yoga on our mind? Purification, right? Purification of all the mental impurities, like we said, of ego, anger, etc. Then, what do we work on next after that? What's the next step? The next highway, we have to, merge into a different highway or get on an airplane, which is something else. What's that? Bhakti yoga, exactly. Bhakti yoga and karma yoga are basically, we are doing it simultaneously here. But imagine, can you sit near Amma and feel devotion and sing bhajans if you're upset mentally? You're angry at somebody? What kind of an experience of bhajans are you going to have? What kind of a devotional meditation are you going to have? So first you have to sort of neutralize all the negative emotions. That's why we say karma yoga first. It purifies the mind. Then you can actually talk about, I'm going to meditate on Amma's form or sing a song with devotion. So bhakti or upasana is generally considered a slightly, later stage. And then once we have mental purification and one-pointedness of mind, then we can really do what? Yeah, well then we can start, then only can we really start to focus our mind inwards and understand, who am I? If you're angry and if you can't concentrate, someone says, who are you? It doesn't mean anything. You're not even going to sit still long enough to even think of the question. So, and once you start on that path of self-discovery and you go deeper and deeper in it, what the saints say is that it reveals itself to you. And it is self-luminous, so it will shine within your heart, and you realize that actually you've been liberated the whole time. That's what they say. We just don't know it. Isn't that a nice sort of marketing blurb, But it's true, so we can't, mock it really. So this is the route map. If you're not qualified to understand self-knowledge, then acquire that qualification. Become prepared. Prepare your mind. So if you have that clarity of the route map, what's going to happen if someone comes to you tomorrow and says, hey, I heard that you were meditating and you were, meeting this Mahatma named Amma, and, she was teaching you about self-realization. I got something even better than self-realization for you. You got to listen to this. Come on. And they give you a big spiel about something better than self-realization. What's going to happen? If you have irresolute intellect, like he says, many are the, what does he say? Many branched and endlessly diverse are the intellects of the irresolute. So let's say you're one of those irresolute intellects or minds. Someone comes to you and says, oh yeah, God realization, that's nothing. I got something even better than that for you. It costs a few $1,000s, but just listen to what I have to say, You may,
I was just thinking about Scientology.
Okay, well, I don't know anything about it actually, but you may just say, okay, you might reach for your wallet, right?
In India, get the self-realization in 50,000 rupees or something.
Okay. It'd be great if you could buy it. We'd all, all the rich people would have been realized a long time ago. So that's the danger. If you don't know the path, or they say, you don't have to do karma yoga. Purity, you don't need purity. We're going to go out and we're going to get impurity and we're going to get realized. We're going to do all the bad things we can think of and we'll still be realized. That's appealing. It appeals to some people maybe that we can do that. Right? So anyhow, the point is that if we don't know the route map and what the tradition says and what the realized beings say, most importantly, anybody can tell us anything and we might believe it. And what will happen also is that you'll try it for a week and you'll say, nah, not this. Then somebody comes next week and says, oh, I got a good book for you. You read that, I'm going to do this for a week. And then that didn't work either. You're going to have a big garbage can full of books and techniques and you're not going to have any peace of mind. Right? So that's what, Amma doesn't want us to end up there. She says, you understand the path, everybody has a little bit different flavor of it, but ultimately the path, the essence of it is the same. Nobody got to God realization, self-realization without inner purification. It's just a must. So, if someone tells you the contrary, don't listen to them, basically. And you're going to be self-realized without knowing yourself. You can do that. Let's say somebody comes and tells you that. It's like a contradiction in terms, but let's say, no, it's possible. I just need a little money, I'll sell it to you, So anyhow, we're like cannon fodder for all these kind of arguments if we don't understand the root map. And I used to get very frustrated about nobody's teaching me meditation when I first came to Amma. I didn't know anything about anything, especially then. And but obviously there was a reason why I wasn't being initiated into some grandiose meditation technique, because I wasn't ready for it. So when we get confused and we're on a path of confusion, maybe somewhat like what Shane was hinting at, then the tendency is you want everybody to be confused with you together. So, and you get kind of on your, high horse and drag everybody into the same so you can feel superior. The more people on the same confusion, path of confusion, the more secure you feel, instead of just being there and being confident on your own. So, if it fails, Amma says, if it fails, you might even become an atheist. That's the dangerous thing. So let's be sure that we get clear about where we're headed. Yeah.
I'm interested in this section that we did before, where Krishna was appealing to Arjuna's ego, actually.
Yeah.
And now we've jumped to Krishna in a totally different direction of the detachment and the purification.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put those two things together.
Well, I think I said when we were talking about the sort of the worldly arguments that Krishna gave Arjuna, that it was just a device that he was using to sort of get Arjuna just emboldened, just get him up, because he was just so depressed. So sometimes you have to say extreme things to people who are in a state of inertia, just to prod them out of that inertia. That's usually how we understand this section of the Gita, because it's clearly not the essence of Krishna's argument in talking about fame and like being ridiculed by your enemies. I mean, he never talks about it after that. So it's clearly not the main topic, but he uses it at one point. And then he comes back to the main subject, basically. That's all it is. Yeah, like we said, if your kids are not studying, the parents might say, okay, if you study, I'll give you candy. And the kid doesn't study. You say, okay, if you don't study, I'm going to give your enemy candy. They say, okay, I'll study. Like that. Sometimes you have to use worldly techniques to get people to do even spiritual things. So, just to conclude this, it's said there's so many wrong answers in life, that concept of the resolute intellect. There's so many wrong answers, and people who don't, understand the root map will constantly shift their minds from here and there. But once you find the correct answer, like for example, in my case, when I met him, I felt like I found my spiritual answer. Okay, so I'm just going to stick with one thing. This is all I need, right? So that's a sign that you've kind of figured out what works for you. And it reminded me, I wanted to share a little story with you. There was this stories about the mullah. You've heard, Mullah Nasruddin. There's a lot of funny stories. Ron likes to tell stories about Mullah Nasruddin also. So the mullah is sitting there on his porch, just plucking a string over and over again on the guitar. Just one string. Dang, 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 dang. This guy walks up and he says, why are you just plucking the same note over and over and over again? Why don't you play a few other notes just for the sake of making music? And he says, why should I? He says, well, everybody does that. They all play different notes. And he says, they're all looking for the right note. I found it. Just dang, I found the right note. You're just going to play that one over and over and over again. So, like that, people have a resolute mind find the right path and they stick with it. So the question becomes, well, what do the people of an irresolute mind look like? Those people who, like us, who are prone to get confused and lost. And Krishna is going to tell us about that next time. So we're going to try to follow up on that. It's kind of going to be like a self-description for most of us, what he's going to say. And we're going to try to do that next week, but we have a homa on Saturday morning, 6 a.m. So that's like if we're doing this at 9:30, I have to be sitting for a homa at 6 a.m. It means I have to do a lot of preparation beforehand, get it out of the way. So I'll try. If I can get the Gita class ready, if the week allows me to get the class ready day before, then I'll be able to do it. So I will try to structure my week, and we'll send an email out so you'll know. And I'm already over time, but I know there was a question from Bhuji.
Yeah, he's already offline, so.
Oh, do you remember his question?
No, I have a question in front of me.
Just tell me what he was asking, because it'll go on the video and then he can.
Yeah, in this shloka, the 39th shloka,
Yeah.
perhaps Lord is saying to Arjun, now listen to the principles of yoga by practicing which you can break through the bonds of yoga, bonds of karma. Now he's saying that as you saw, so shall ye reap by Jesus the Christ, same as the bonds of karma here in Gita. So he just want to see the comparison.
As you sow, so shall you reap,
Yeah.
is what Jesus says in the Bible, which many people in the modern day, interpret as a kind of a proof of that Jesus believed in karma. Some people interpret it that way. So Pramod's point is that maybe it'll free you from the bond of karma. You don't have to really refer to the Bible to get that derivation, because Krishna makes it very clear here. That's what he's talking about, karma. But yeah, for someone who benefits from seeing references in the Bible, then that is a common, in the post-yogic boom days, in the West, like some of the early yogis who came to the US in the 19th century and the early 20th century. After this, they started interpreting the Bible from the standpoint of yogic science, and that has been said of it, that as you sow, so shall you reap, is Jesus' way of talking about karma. All right. Any other burning questions? Or I'm already over time. Only 3 verses, but I wanted to give you guys a basic overview of karma yoga. All right. We have question and answer tomorrow night also, so if you're here tomorrow and you have a question, you can bring it up tomorrow. So we'll chant some concluding verses, and then we will meditate. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So the official ending time is over, and many people have to go, I know, after this, so we always take a break here, let people use the restroom or go home if they have to. Those who have time, you can stay with us and meditate for a few minutes. Be mindful of the fact that the room is warm, so there's a tendency to become drowsy. Very warm now, so keep your spine and neck straight. If you want to avoid being sleepy, keep your spine and neck straight and breathe very consciously, deliberately, taking long, deep breaths. With each inhalation, feel your body and mind relaxing further and further. Heighten your awareness of the breathing process even further. Be fully conscious as you breathe. Make your mind flow along with the breath, in and out. Using the breath is one of the best ways to maintain an awareness of our goal in life. Synchronize your mantra with the breath and make the mantra a symbol of your life goal. Infuse both the inhalation and exhalation internally with the sound of your mantra. By doing so, you can constantly remember your life goal through the breathing process. Now let us open our hearts and pray to Amma, with the innocence and love of a small child. Oh Amma, as I take each and every breath throughout the day, please help me remember you. Amma, you please become my breath. Let me breathe in you, and with each exhalation, may your love and light penetrate and permeate my being even deeper and deeper. In this way, may my breath become a constant reminder of you as the goal of life, merging in you, realizing myself. Please flow on my lips and inside of me constantly. We'll now close with the final prayer. Take a deep breath. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnaan Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. One long deep breath, and as you exhale, slowly open your eyes. Namah Shivaya. Thanks for coming.